So before I get into this non-spoiler review for Madam Web, which I just watched yesterday, I want to make it absolutely clear that any of the directors, writers, actors, producers, whatever, that worked on this film, I don't think they, don't deserve to make any movies going forward. Like, I definitely think there could be a lot of talented people that work on this film. So any of the negatives I say about this movie, I don't want it to be indicative of their possible talent of what they could do in the filmmaking industry. And with that being said, this has to be one of the worst comic book movies I have ever seen. And I've probably seen majority of them at this point, at least the ones that are, more popular. And I think it's one of the worst. Like, it's in the conversation for maybe the top 5 worst comic book movies ever. It's in the conversation for one of the worst movies ever. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. But before we jump into all the reasons as to why I think this movie just did not work on like almost any level, let's talk about the few positives, because I don't think there's any movie out there that has like no positives. There's always something you can find that is a good thing about this film. And so for Madam Web, I would say there's a couple decent scenes in it. The diner scene specifically and the subway scene. I actually liked both of those scenes. If you watch the movie, you know what scenes I'm talking about. They're entertaining. I thought they were fine scenes. They were mostly well done in terms of the directing and the choreography. Wasn't all great, but there were some decent moments within them. I also really liked some of the chemistry between the main characters here. I don't necessarily think their acting was that good. Now, obviously, they are all good actresses. I've seen them in other projects before. They can all do good work. But in this specific film, they aren't really given much to work with here, so their acting doesn't really come across as that good in like any scene. But I do like their chemistry. They were fun to watch every now and then. I also think the general concept of the character of Madam Web is pretty cool, but I mean, obviously they didn't create that concept. That was, it's a comic character, but I do like the concept of it. I thought she was interesting and what her powers were in terms of being able to kind of see the future. It's a cool idea, and seeing her kind of try to learn those abilities did have some interesting moments. And the last positive is that I do really like some of the nostalgic early 2000s, late 90s music that this movie has. It takes place in 2003, so you have a lot of nostalgic stuff there. If you grew up during that time, a lot of the music that plays, you're probably going to like the music. So that is definitely a positive I could mention. And now let's get into the negatives, because yes, that's the only really good things about the movie, I would say. Starting off with the directing, just in general, like how is the movie shot? How do the scenes look? Like, it's pretty terrible. The way the movie is directed is just mind-numbingly bad, and I just don't really understand how, when you're given this much money to work on a project, like how is it able to end up like this? I'm assuming there was a lot of reshoots, there was a lot of changing up the movie in post-production, so I'm sure it ended up making it look a lot worse than it actually was. Maybe there's a cut of this movie out there that maybe is a lot better, but just how it was, it is so messy, and obviously that also has to do with the awful editing, some of the worst editing I've seen in film ever. The pacing is really bad. There's some scenes that move really quickly, and there's some scenes that move at the slowest pace imaginable. There's this whole like 20 to 30 minute sequence where the main character of Cassandra Webb goes all the way to the Amazons in Peru to learn more about her backstory, and it's just like this really long, drawn out sequence, and I'm just like, I'm basically falling asleep during those scenes. The exposition dumping in this movie is horrendous because it causes so many characters to speak in ways that just don't make sense. It's just like really bad dialogue, but they only do it just for the sake of the audience learning more about these characters. They don't find any interesting ways to deliver exposition, and instead it's just dumped on us constantly. There's so many scenes that are just there to dump exposition on us. And as an example, those Amazon scenes basically feel like that, where she's just being dumped exposition in the most inorganic way possible. I usually don't harp on CGI too much in movies nowadays, because sometimes I don't really think it's that bad. A lot of people will over-exaggerate how bad CGI is. In this movie, it's pretty bad, but like I said, it doesn't really take me out of the movie. I've seen plenty of movies with bad CGI that I can still enjoy quite a bit. But this one, it's just something I gotta mention for the negatives, that CGI was not good. There was not a single, visual effect in any sort of way that looked good really at all. Especially given the budget. I mean, I think it was like a $100 million budget, something around that. It should have looked a lot better than it did. One of the things I noticed right off the bat was the awful ADR. Now, if you don't know what ADR is, it's basically re-recording audio in the studio after they've already filmed the scene, and then they use that re-recorded voice audio over the character in the scene itself. But there are some scenes, specifically with the main villain in this film, for some reason, most of his scenes use it for some reason. So you can just, if you look at his face, his lips are not moving the same with what he's saying. And it's like, he must be re-recording audio that's completely separate from what his lips are saying, because it just doesn't match up. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like, it looks so horrible. And there's so many scenes with that character specifically where that happens. I don't know why that happened, but you can tell that that's the case. When you're watching the movie, just look at the man's lips when he's speaking. A lot of the scenes, it is not matching up with what he's actually saying. The dialogue itself is pretty horrible, and it's not like bad in a sort of like, you know, MCU, like forced humor sort of a way, which only some MCU movies really do, but there is some of that in here, don't get me wrong, there's definitely some forced humor, but even just on a basis level of just normal dialogue, whether it's a serious scene, a comic relief scene, like whatever it is, the dialogue is horrible. It does not sound real. It sounds, I know everyone always uses this phrase, but it sounds like it was written by AI. I'm not kidding. Like, it does not sound like what people actually talk like. And it makes me wonder, again, I don't want to like hate on the writers, but like, how do you actually think people talk like this? It sounds so bad. And this didn't bother me that much. I know a lot of people are complaining about it on Twitter right now, but there was some annoying moments with them constantly making references to Spider-Man stuff. Like, they make a joke about Uncle Ben getting shot in the Queens, because Uncle Ben is in this movie. That's not a spoiler. He's a character in this movie. He's one of the main characters. And they make a joke about like, oh, you don't like getting shot in the Queens or something like that. Some sort of joke about getting shot in the Queens. And then they also talk about the whole responsibility thing like 5 times in this movie. Like, the whole concept of responsibility is brought up so many times. They beat around the bush about, you know, Peter Parker's name because, you know, Peter's mother, Mary Parker, is in this movie and she's pregnant. They keep talking about like the baby's name and they never actually say the baby's name. It's kind of like, it's just, it doesn't really bother me, but it's just kind of stupid. You know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't like hold down the movie that much, but it's just an extra thing that just kind of annoy me. And I feel like they were just trying to, you know, make people all excited about Spider-Man related stuff when we knew damn well Spider-Man was not going to show up in this movie, obviously. But the worst thing about this movie by far is how horribly misleading the marketing was for it. Now, I understand they need people to go see this movie, so of course they're going to market it in a way that looks more desirable. But why not make the actual movie like that then? And let me explain. Some people might consider this a spoiler. I personally don't consider this a spoiler, what I'm about to say, so just keep that in mind. If you don't want to know literally anything about this movie, maybe click off now. But I personally don't see this as a spoiler. I think this is more of a warning because it is important to know. I think the expectations you go into for this film are important to know, and this is something that I think will change your experience if you know this going into it. So you know how there's 3 Spider-Women in this movie, basically? Like, there's 3 characters that were frequently shown in the trailers in their suits with their powers. They looked all badass and cool. Like, I'll admit it, like, I saw the trailers. I didn't think the trailers looked good or anything, but I do think that the characters, they had cool looking suits. I thought they were fine. I wanted to see them kick ass, you know, as the Spider-Women, basically. Like, I thought that'd be exciting, right? When you actually watch the movie, I am not exaggerating when I say this. When you actually watch the movie, there is maybe 30 seconds of screen time where these characters are actually in those suits with those powers. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not kidding. 30 seconds, maybe. I'm being generous there. It might be like 20 seconds. They never actually even get their powers or suits in the actual movie itself. The only time we see them in their suits with their powers is in a vision sequence of the future, because that's the whole plot of this movie. This main character, the main villain, he has these visions of the future of these Spider-Women sabotaging his plans. And so that's the whole movie. He's just trying to kill these 3 Spider-Women, but it's before they actually get their powers. And I kept thinking to myself, oh, they're probably going to get their powers like halfway through the movie maybe, so we'll see them suit up, and then by the end of the movie we'll have some like really cool action scene with them as, you know, Spider-Women. No, they never get their powers in this movie. They never get their suits. The only time we see it is in that vision sequence, and at the very, very end of the movie there's like a 10 to 15 second long montage where they show them later in the future using their abilities. They never actually get to that point in the movie though. This would be equivalent to like a Spider-Man movie. Like, let's say they market it as a Spider-Man movie, like the same way they did for any other Spider-Man movie. But instead of Peter actually getting bitten by a spider and becoming Spider-Man, the movie's just about Peter Parker's parents, and it's about, you know, Peter Parker as a kid before he becomes Spider-Man. But they market it as like, oh, this is the big, oh, he's gonna be Spider-Man in this movie. I know the movie's not called Spider-Women. I understand that. It's called Madam Web. It's about Madam Web. I understand that. The Spider-Women are supporting characters, but why market it as them getting their powers and, you know, fighting bad guys and stuff if they never actually do that in the movie? It's baffling marketing. Did you not expect people to watch the movie and then go, where are the Spider Women? Why don't they get their powers? Why are they just normal girls the whole movie? Which is exactly the case. They are just normal girls the whole movie. The only time they're in their suits is that vision sequence. And guess what? Literally every shot from those sequences were in the trailers. So if you were excited to see, Sydney Sweeney being a badass in her Spider-Woman suit, like, you're not gonna get that. You could just go watch the trailer. Just literally watch the trailer and you'll get every single second of it in that trailer. The movie just doesn't have anything more. So that is by far the worst part of this movie, because it's just blatantly false advertising for your film, and it's the most egregious false advertising I think I've ever seen. And the movie plays out in a way where it makes it seem like they're building up towards a sequel. You know damn well a sequel's not gonna happen. If it does, that would be hilarious, but like, damn well a sequel's not gonna happen. So why make this movie feel like the origin to an origin story? Like, it's too origin, like, it's so far back, because it doesn't even reach the point where these characters get to become Spider-Women. I'm sure they knew they couldn't convince people to see a Madam Web movie if it was just Madam Web, so that's why they threw in all the Spider-Women, but like, actually have them be Spider-Women in the goddamn movie then. I saw some people on Twitter, and granted, it's not a lot of people because not many people like this movie, but I saw some people defending the movie saying that people only dislike it because Spider-Man's not in it, and everyone was, hoping for Spider-Man to be in it. But that's not the case at all. Like, I don't think many people gave a shit about whether or not Spider-Man was getting in the movie. We just wanted to see Spider-Women. I wanted to see some badass Spider-Women. They weren't there. I know I wasn't expecting it to be good. I know nobody was really expecting it to be good. The trailers didn't look good. The writers worked on Morbius previously, so we didn't really have, any reason to believe this was going to be a great movie. Sony's track record hasn't been that great. So yeah, I didn't expect it to be great or anything. I didn't even expect it to be good, but I was hoping it would at least be somewhat entertaining. And a lot of the early reviews made it sound like this movie was going to be unintentionally hilarious. It wasn't even that. It never even reached the levels of so bad it's good. It was just so bad that it was boring, and I just didn't want to watch it anymore. Like, that's all it was to me. I didn't even have that many like laugh out loud moments. Maybe one or two moments, but like, there wasn't enough of that. If they went more campy with it, then maybe it would have worked better for me, because maybe it would have been like kind of like unintentionally hilarious, like kind of like Morbius was. Morbius was unintentionally funny, and it felt a lot campier. So it being such a bad movie worked out kind of okay. And not that I think Morbius is good or anything. I still think Morbius is pretty bad, but it's at least better than this, because at least I had some fun with it. This movie's not even fun. It's just not. It's just it doesn't. So for a rating, I'm going to give this a 1.5 out of 10. That's, I think, the worst rating I've ever given a movie on this channel for a review. Don't think I've ever gone that low. But yeah, that's just how I feel, man. It's just not a good movie. It's not even decent. It's really, really bad. It's awful. It's a terrible movie. Oh man, I don't know. It confuses me because like, they have so much money. Sony makes so much money from the Spider-Man movies. Like, why can't you put together a decent project then? Like, I don't understand. Like, they can do that. They've done it before. Even the Venom movies are fine. Like, I enjoy the Venom movies, so why not just do something like that? I don't know. I'm still excited for Kraven. I think the Kraven movie could be kind of good. I'm not expecting anything that great, but I'm hoping it could at least be decent. I'm hoping Venom 3 could be good. But I don't know. They're not doing good recently, man. This movie is just, it's a travesty. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you guys all in my next one. Peace out.